All right, everyone, let's go ahead and work on our second test. When depositing using transfer, then charge fee to the amount deposited. Now, this is kind of like an interesting feature because it may even be when depositing using transfer, then charge 2% fee to amount deposited. All right, because you have to ask the domain expert or the project manager that, hey, how much fees are we charging, right? So if this is the question that when depositing using transfer deposit type, then charge 2% fee to the amount deposited, how would we write that test? So let's go back to our test and just write it over here. Function deposit, or you can say depositing using transfer type charges 2% fee to the balance. All right. So basically, whatever you're depositing is going to charge 2% of that. So your balance or the amount that you're depositing will be less in that case. All right. And we will decorate it with test. Now, just by looking at the name, depositing using transfer type charges 2% fee. Okay, we're not really checking for the fee, but we're checking for the actual balance. So it means that if you are trying to, trying to deposit $500, and there is some sort of amount that you want to, the fee percentage is 2%, which over here it says over there, or you're basically depositing like $200, then then it would be interesting to see like what kind of fee will be calculated on that $200. But one of the things to keep in mind over here is that this fee can actually change. I mean, right now it's 2%, but maybe tomorrow is 2.5%. So this is kind of interesting that should we be using the actual fee, which is 2% fee, in the test name or not. And there is no right or wrong answer in this case, because if you have something that is changing and fee does change, then probably it's not a good idea to have the name or the actual amount of the fee in the name. So depositing using transfer type charges fee. I think we should probably keep it this way because tomorrow it can be 3% fee and then we have to change it. And then tomorrow it will be 4% fee and then we have to change it and so on. All right. Now, some might say, well, that's good because if you're changing the fee, then, our code will not work. That can be a good point, but I think you will be changing the name of the function again and again because that is just one of those things that changes so often. All right. Okay, so we'll create the bank account again. We already have that, so we'll just go ahead and create the bank account. Let's have a fee percentage. Fee percentage 0.02, which is basically 2%. So that's the fee that we're looking at. The deposit amount that you are charging is $200. So that's the amount that we're going to be depositing. And then finally, the expected balance. Okay, so what will be the expected balance? So that's going to be interesting. So you can use ChatGPT or something to find out what will be the expected balance, but fee percentage is 2% deposit amount. So on the deposit amount, we're going to be charging that particular fee. So I think it will come out to be $696 or something like that. All right, but we can definitely check it out. Okay. So $4 will be the fee. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and say bank account dot deposit, the amount that we want to deposit, which will be the deposit amount. Deposit type in this case is transfer. And what I'm expecting over here will be that the bank account dot balance will be equals to expected balance. So 696 or close to that. Okay. Now, if I run this test right now, you will note that the test should fail because in the deposit function itself, we have not really calculated the fee. So whatever you're depositing, you can see that it's saying that, well, I deposited, it's actually the balance is $700, but the expected balance was 696. So that's what is going on. We were expecting it to be 696, but it is $700. Okay. So how can we fix that? Well, we will have to go to our actual code for the bank account, and we have to make that change over here. Okay. So in this deposit amount over here, what we are going to do is we're going to check for a couple of different things. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and say transfer fee percentage 0.02. That is 2%. All right. Now, we do have to make sure that for when we're depositing using check or cash, then it is, working as expected. So we do have to make sure of that part. So we can perform a switch on the deposit type. If it is check or even if it's cash, then we don't really do anything. I mean, we just go ahead and do the same thing that we were doing before, like plus equals to amount. All right. But if it is transfer, this becomes a little bit different because now we have to calculate the fee. So let's go ahead and calculate the fee, which is amount multiplied by the transfer fee percentage. So that's going to give us the fee. The amount that we are depositing will be like $200. And if you take $200 and then you take 2%, whatever the fee comes out to be, and then we can actually use that. So the amount can be self.balance. I mean, there are different ways of writing it. And then probably we can say amount minus fee. And we can remove this one. Okay, so that's I guess a minimum amount of code that we can write to accomplish this task. Let's go back and then run it again. And there we go. Awesome. It's passing. Now, one other thing that you can do, and I will leave it up to you, is if you want to pass in percentage as a test argument, you can do that. But in this case, it's not really that much necessary. I mean, if you want to, that's perfectly fine. You will have to pass in the fee percentage, probably the deposit amount if you want to, or, at least fee percentage and expected balance. And then you can calculate more of these. So you can definitely do those things. But the thing that you have to realize over here is that how we wrote our test, and then that allowed us to change our deposit function. And we use this because we are using test-driven development in this case. Now, if something happens and, our fee gets changed, let's say the fee is now 3%. Okay, these things change. So now fee is 3%. So you can assume that, okay, this fee part, I mean, maybe we are getting it from remote server or something, so you can change it automatically and on the fly without having to changing the code and then building it and all that stuff. You can think about those things. But now if I go back and I run my actual test, then you can see that the test will actually fail. And that's a good idea because now we're saying, okay, hold on a second, is there a problem with the test itself? Or is there a problem with the actual code? So if somebody changes these things accidentally, maybe somebody set it 0.03%, or maybe the server was returning 3% instead of 2%, then we know there's a problem and we can fix those things. Okay? I can run this test again. And now, since I've changed it, you can see both of my tests are actually passing. So that is what test-driven development is all about. We always have to make sure that the test is going to protect us from the changes that we are doing. All right. So it's kind of like a safety net. If you fall, then the test will be there to protect you. Now, keep that in mind that these tests that we are writing, these are not all the tests. I mean, there can be so many hundreds of tests that you can actually write, and you should be writing a lot more tests for your domain model because this is where your logic is. This is where the business rules are. And that is the most important part of the application where you can write more tests. Now, in the next lecture, I'll show you a very small trick that I use to get a notification, kind of like a sound notification, whenever the test passes or test fails. And I'll show you how you can set up those things.